Hey guys, Gemini here doing a replay analysis. This one was sent in by RegisViris, and his comment was that game plan is 2 base quick Colossus tech. This game, what ended up happening is I saw him on 1 base and extended my wall off a bit more than I would normally do versus Terran due to my fear of Hellions. Though I think I did kinda okay versus Ground Army, but the Banshees did too much damage. Then the Hellions run up my ramp versus all my clumped probes, and I panic force field, losing Immortal. Then I try to 1 base all on him, thinking he wouldn't have enough, but I die. So I guess I'll just go right into it from the start. I'll touch on all the other points you mentioned as they come up. The first thing I noticed in this game before we get into the other kind of things is this scout is very odd. You do a 16 scout, which I think, which was after the pylon. I think that's what you did. And then you just send it right up here, which is really weird. I personally think, and a lot of other, Protosses as well, think you should always gateway scout, because you can see anything you need to with a gateway scout. Even if they wall in before you get into their base, that's very telling of itself as well. So a lack of information, therefore, is information in some cases. So you should always be 13 scouting after gateway, and you should always be going to their main. This kind of thing, I see what you do. You go in after your Nexus is done, so that you get in, and so you get in by the time the Reaper would be halfway across the map, which is good. That's a great timing to know. But to allocate a probe to literally nothing the entire early game just so you can do that later is an extremely large waste. You'll see some Protosses not scout in PvT because they think the mineral income that you lose by scouting is not worth the information you get from scouting, which, if you ask me, I personally think is retarded. Like, the information you get from scouting is way more worth the minerals you get from you lose from the scouting probe. So I'm not going to argue that here or talk about that because I think that's just complete bullshit. So, but in this case, since you're doing nothing with this probe for so long, it would be better if it was mining. Like, if your plan was to do the thing where you get in here afterwards, then you need to send it later, or you send it earlier to do an actual scout on his actual base. Because if you did, you would have been able to know that this was a 1 base gas first build before you see anything. You'll be able to know exactly. You'll be able to know instantly when you go into his main base. You'll see the barracks is slightly late. You can go to his gas, click on it, see that it's mined a lot more. By this time, when the Vrax is usually when the Vrax is finishing and he's doing a normal Reaper expand, he would have only mined 50 gas, just enough for the Reaper. But in this case, since he went gas first, he has mined 100 gas, so that way when the barracks finishes, he can make a factory right away. So you would be able to see that, and you know exactly what he's doing just based off of that single scout, and everything would be fine and dandy. But you wait a long time. You also make the Mothership Core before the Nexus. If you scouted, you would not need to do that. You would see that he was not making a Reaper. I assume you do this just in case of a Reaper, so it's easier to defend. That's on it. You don't actually need to do that because the timing works out where if you get the Nexus and then the Mothership Core, what happens is if he does a 13 gas, then as the Reaper comes in, the Mothership Core will finish, thus warding it off. If he does a 12 gas, then the Reaper will come in about a second earlier than the Mothership Core, so you just have to micro probe back, and then the Mothership Core will be out, and you'll be fine. If you don't feel comfortable, then fine, you can do the Mothership Core before the Nexus. It's not the biggest deal, but it's also not necessary. I was going to say something else. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to say that if you scouted earlier, seeing that it was a gas first, there would be no Reaper, so you don't have to worry about getting the Mothership Core before the Nexus. Then you can do the Nexus and then the Mothership Core. So then you get your scout in. Luckily for you, he wasn't at the ramp, so that you actually got in and be able to see a full scout of everything, so that was very lucky on you. If he was just over here denying scouting, you would have known absolutely nothing as to what exactly he was doing. He could have one Rax expanded for all you know with a few Marines attacking your probe. So you should know what's happening, which is fine. This robo is very late. I'm just going to keep jumping around and talking about anything I notice. If you're going to be doing a passive 2-base quick Colossus tech build, 520 math, wow, 520 is very late for the robo to be going down for a quick Colossus tech build, like you say. 5 minutes is the time the robo should be going down for any sort of early Colossus build. If you're going to be going for just straight to robo passive play, 5 minutes is the time you get it. There's no other time to ever get it, unless you're doing a special opener with like some stalkers earlier before the Nexus or something like that. Some builds are like that. But if you're just doing the normal 1 Rax expand into robo passive play, robo is always down at 5 minutes. So 20 seconds late is kind of bad. You should also be making stalkers non-stop out of this. This pylon and gateway. Okay, this is where you said you wall off more because you don't want to deal with Hellions. So this is okay. This is really cool. This is awesome. I love doing this. This makes this, like, so many people don't think about this and they waste so many minerals doing stuff like this. And the same idea of walling off is solved with so many less things. So when you scout with your 13 probe and you see exactly what he's doing before you do literally anything, you'll know exactly what's happening. So what you can do is, since you know what he's doing before your Nexus even goes down, what you do, where's that third pylon? This is your third pylon? You take this third pylon, put it right here, take this robo, put it right here, take this stalker, put it right here, full wall off. His Hellions can't do anything. Mothership Core patrolling right here. That Hellion does literally nothing. He can't get into your base. Your Hellions are now defended. So many people will waste so many minerals doing crazy wall-offs like this, or they don't and they just lose things because they didn't wall-off at all. And also now, because you're doing this, you can't actually afford any extra stalkers early on. So if you just do the normal thing that takes all of the things you would be building anyway and just putting them in a better spot, there's 0 minerals lost, and you can do your build completely normally as ever. And you can get your 3 stalkers out, and you'll be perfectly fine. I have the highest win rate. I would argue I don't know statistically. I would argue I have the highest win rate ever against Terrans doing 1-base gas first openers because of this thing. It's so easy. Oh my god, it's hard. It's like heartbreaking to see people lose to stuff like this, because to me it's honestly extremely simple. So you just do the wall off. You get your 3 stalkers, and then on 36 supply is when you get your 2 extra gates. So that way, right when warp gate is finished, all 3 gateways will be done. You get a observer immediately when the robo finishes, and you chrono it in case he's doing a mine drop. And then you put your 1 stalker here to block. You put your Mothership Core in the middle so you can photon overcharge either base. If he runs in with Hellions, you can photon overcharge it, run the probes away. And then your 2nd and 3rd stalker will be placed just in your main so you can have more coverage to see if a medevac comes in. The 1st observer goes rallying into the mineral line, so that, because usually he'll drop the main instead of the natural. So the observer will be in the main, so you can easily just pull the probes away and then bring your stalkers or overcharge, so that way the mine does nothing. 2nd observer will go to the natural, 3rd observer will go to his base. And what you can also do, this won me so many games, so many fucking games. I saw this off of Hero's stream first. Oh my god, this won me so many games versus gas first openers. If you can get that sequence down and completely nail the drop defense, which is honestly not that hard. If you just go through it a few times with a friend or something, and just get the sequence of buildings down, and just make sure your positioning and map awareness is good, and you just completely destroy the mine opening. Does 0 damage. During all of that, you have a probe on the map that was your scouting probe. Your scouting probe hides, and at 40 supply or 52 supply, when you need to make that next pylon, you hide a pylon on the map. You have 3 gateways. You warped in 3 stalkers. You made 3 stalkers. You warped in 3 stalkers to defend. You have 6 stalkers at home. By the time the drop defense is done, 3 more stalkers warped in over here, instantly counterattacking. Your other stuff comes across. You have 9 stalkers in his base at the time that he is taking command center and putting extra add-ons on his buildings. He has nothing to defend. Absolutely nothing. This won me so many games when I first found out about this. Like, oh my god, it still wins me games. Some Terran builds are much better at dealing with that now since they became popular, but especially in lower leagues. Oh my, the amount, every time I match up versus a random diamond, or like I'm unranked or something, warming up, and I get some poor ass fucking Terran trying to mind drop me, holy shit, fucking annihilate that fucker. Their builds are not set to deal with that kind of quick counterattack, so you will win. I'll promise you will win 99% of your games versus gas first openers if you do that response well enough. Okay, I said all that. Cool, wonderful. So look at all those fucking minerals you're wasting doing all these things walling off against 1 fucking Hellion. He makes 2, I think. He makes 2 in total. Where's the second one? There it is. There's his second Hellion. I don't think he makes a single other one after that. Look at all this money spent in pylons doing absolutely nothing. That could be gateways, extra stalkers, and observers. Oh, okay, he makes a 3rd Hellion. Whoops. So you respond to this quite late. You see this happening. You could just... I don't actually know if you can actually attack any of that, to be honest. But, anyway. You can still be defending it. You should be warping in non-stop. Sentries, again, they're not what you want. Stalkers are what you want in this position. Sentries are great for force fields, but there's not much really to force field except the Hellions. But when you already have so much allocated to walling off, the sentries don't do anything. But just in general, stalkers are much better early game at defending versus these kinds of things, because their range is so much better, their damage is so much better, and they coincide, what's the word? I don't know, they go well together with overcharge, because the overcharge will be ranging down at them, and even if they try to like poke in, the stalkers can once they go out, the stalkers have long enough range that they can stay in the photon overcharge protection while still poking away at the units that are outside of overcharge. So even though the overcharge isn't dealing damage to them, you're still dealing damage to the stalkers because the range is so high. So stalkers work very well with overcharge early on. So you should be getting those. You can defend this, like I said earlier, like the Immortal, like you might think the Immortal is so necessary. Oh, he's got Hellions. Oh, he's doing fast tech shit. Oh, I need high-tech units. You don't. 6 Stalkers will defend this 100%. This should never touch 6 Stalkers ever. Not a single Stalker will die. I can guarantee you that. If you just get 3 before the warp gate finishes and 3 right when the warp gate does finish, that will you can hold this without losing a single stalker. And then the Banshee comes in, you're not prepared for it because you made Immortals for some fucking reason. I'm just being mean now. Always be observers, especially since I think you even saw it. You see the you didn't actually see the tech lab. You could have saw it, but whatever. Observers always. Again, you don't need Immortals. You just need Stalkers to defend. So then the Robo can be used for observers instead of Immortals. So that way, Cloaked Banshees can't kill you. At this point, I would consider the game lost. Actually, no, I wouldn't. If you could just kill these 2 fucking Banshees, then I would. I would say at this point, it's still semi-ish recoverable. If you just warp in some fucking Stalkers out of all these gateways. Holy shit, you only have 1 Stalker, please. Okay, there you go. So now, you can kill this. Yay. But you keep making Immortals. I don't know why. You don't need Immortals versus this. Marines and Hellions, I mean, like, just mass a bunch of fucking Stalkers. Like, chrono these warp... Actually, don't chrono these warp gates. Chrono at probes. Just make a lot of Stalkers. Like, Stimless, unupgraded. His combat shieldless, too. There's literally upgradeless Marine, Hellion, Banshee. Like, Stalkers shit all over this. You just need a crap ton of Stalkers. Just be chronoing probes the entire time, and you can still come back from this easily. So at this point, I would not consider it completely lost if you were just chrono boosting probes nonstop, not making this immortal, and just making a lot of Stalkers. I would say you absolutely are still in this one. But then once you lose some stuff here, this is where you lose it. I'm not sure if your Stalkers were not focus firing or something. That's unfortunate. Yeah, the Stalkers aren't focusing the Banshees the entire time. But again, if you had more Stalkers, you would just be able to focus the Banshees very quickly, kite backwards, and then everything else wouldn't be able to really get on top of you. So at this point, I would consider it lost. Like, he has so many Banshees now that any Stalkers you attempt to be warped in will just be picked off one by one. So at this point, I would consider the game lost. Especially since he has +1 attack. And he's going to kill the Nexus. At this point, you can't really do anything. So anything else after this is a little irrelevant. Everything goes back to what I said earlier. If you can get that kind of opening down, you will win 99.999% of your games versus factory first, or gas first factory openings. Oh, you can see the little bullet. Oh, that's crazy. Sorry. You can, yeah, so you can easily defend that. No problem whatsoever. And then you can counterattack and just win. All the things that happened after that that were giving you troubles would be solved by opening like that. That is the way to open versus a gas first opening. There's no other way. Unless you want to do the Stargate version, but that is more complicated and a little micro-intensive and allows more mistakes. This is the extremely solid version. Not version, way. I don't know. It's not a version of Stargate. This is the more solid way to do it. Less room for error. You have detection everywhere. You have the anti-air, you have the overcharge, and it's much easier. With Stargate play, you have to make sure to have your oracles in the right spots to deal with certain mines. You have to make sure they don't die to mines, and then you have to have your Phoenix chasing the medevacs, and then you have to warp in some Stalkers, and you have to make sure your medevac or your Phoenix aren't just sitting there idle. Like, yeah, there's just too much to worry about. It's a little difficult. So this is much more better. Much more better. I'm good at English. So that's all I have to say for this one. Really, just focus on that earlier part, and all the other things that happened after will be fixed easily. So that's all I got for this one. Hope you enjoyed it.